let's talk, Alan, about, because I know that you're a fourth generation trapper, which blows my mind. Tell us about your history and your family's history. About the outdoors in general, because I know you come from Pennsylvania, and that is a very rich state for all these types of opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, um, my great grandfather, my grandfather, my father, myself, and my son. I just took him. He was on our TV show last year where we got him out there first time. So he's actually fifth generation. When I was growing up, in that mid to late 70s, foxes were selling for $70. The cherry
Yep.
red was bringing $70. Well, $70 back in 1979 is like $300 today. So you can imagine the value of going out. And my dad, my uncles, my grandfather, they were all trappers. I remember watching them make lure. I remember one of the best days of the year for me was actually when we go out and boil traps. They cut open a half of a burn barrel and boil traps. And it was like a family day where my uncles would come, my grandfather, my dad. And it was just rich in tradition. And I really, still to this day, will boil my traps the same. And there's a lot easier methods on cleaning traps. But I go out and I get the wood and I put the logwood dye in. Back then, we were actually shaving bark off of trees to boil in walnut hulls and things like that to give them color. I can still remember some of my most vivid memories from being a young kid was actually with my dad and my grandfather riding in the back seat of the Scout, the International Scout that my dad drove, and riding up on a set around a corner and seeing a red fox or a raccoon. And those moments meant pretty much everything to me at that point. And, when I was 13, I tried to, I did write a book. It wasn't very long, but it was called Beaver Trapping at Its Best. I wrote this. I had the illustrated things. I probably copied a lot off of the Hallbaker book, but back then I was just so ate up with it. Then played baseball, but every year in baseball, maybe one or two. I was living in Orlando in the off season, but every year muskrats would come in on Thanksgiving Day. Then I'd trap that weekend for muskrat, make raccoon, get my trapping fixed. Then deer season always started the Monday after Thanksgiving. And then I would hunt with my father and my family that week. So I would come up every year for a week to kind of get what I call my outdoor fix. And then in 2001 was my last year of baseball. My whole body broke down. And when I say whole body, it did my knees, my arm, everything. And I lived in Orlando for about a year and a half, and the NRA convention was there. And I went and I was like, I'd like to do a show on trapping, because there was no shows on trapping. And I still remember having that conversation with the Outdoor Channel. And they're like, yeah, that was, guy's name was Chris Chafin. I don't know if you know Chris. Chris is a super nice man. And I talked to him, and he's like, yeah, that would be something. And I was so green. I didn't know what it took to do this stuff. I called my dad that night and said, Dad, I'm moving back. I'm coming to Pennsylvania. He goes, oh, yeah, what are you coming up for? I said, no, I'm moving back. He goes, well, what are you going to do for work? And I said, I'm going to do outdoor videos. And he goes, well, how the hell are you going to make money doing that? And I said, I don't know. I'm going to figure it out. And I researched cameras, and to this day, the passion from even when I was 6, 7 years old, I caught my first muskrat when I was 7. That passion is just as strong, if not stronger, today, because I want people and I want kids to go out there and have that feeling. Because as well as, and anybody listening to this that spent some time in the woods, you learn as much about life when it comes to life and death and all these different things that help you in a lot of aspects in your everyday life. You learn when you do pull that trigger, something has a chance of dying, and being able to have that value system, that outdoors approach, I think is something that every kid should at least be able to experience to have that path afforded them.
It's just a fabulous story, Alan. And the thing is you've been doing it for 20 years. I've seen your show progress. I mean, I know you used to be on Pursuit Channel. Now you're on Sportsman Channel. But the thing that I really admire is your approach to it is a lot like our approach has been, is educational and with a emphasis on compassion for the animals, responsibility for the resource, and then the environmental aspect of it as well. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I know that is, I mean, you do a lot of education, not just for teaching people how to trap, but also I've seen the shows where you're incorporating your kid, you're incorporating other kids, you're doing programs. How has that helped you keep that fire burning?
Oh, that's a big part of it. Absolutely. I got pretty stale there for a while. You do TV and you've done a long time. You do the same thing. It gets mundane, and everybody thinks you have a TV show that you're just rich. And if they only knew how the amount of money it takes to actually just provide the programming, and you're just hoping to get some sort of a return on it. It's the outdoor industry, and that's one of the things that a lot of people misconceive is that they think we're being paid. No, we're actually the antithesis of that. We're paying them to run our program. So it got pretty stale for me in the late 2000s, early 2010s, and I needed a new direction. I've always wanted to have that first trapping show on national television. It was something I reached out to F&T. I said, hey, would you like to sponsor my all outdoors show? We do some trapping episodes, da da da. He's like, no, but if you ever do a trapping show, we'll consider it. And that opened the door to talk to them. And then we, got that first North American Trapper show on that was brought to you by them as a title sponsor. And I did that for a couple years, and it got into a point where, monetarily, I just couldn't afford it. I couldn't get enough sponsors. And they said, if you continue to host and produce it, we'll take over the executive duties. I said, fair enough. And so we did that, and that show ran for 10 years. And then about late 2019, I wanted to really, it's always been my goal, starting in 2003, it's been my goal I want North American Trapper to be my life and really focus only on that. And I just decided I'm going to take a chance and I'm going to do it. I'm going to pretty much the answer to your question is the education. Everything that we put out, we want it to be educational, informative, fair, as you said, to the animals, showing, stewardship to not only the land, but your quarry. And nothing that we do, in my mind, before it ever goes to air, I watch it, I rewatch it, I watch it from the perspective of somebody who doesn't know about trapping, somebody who's actually against trapping. Can they use anything that we're doing against us and our heritage and our tradition? And I feel everything we put on falls into those categories of education and the overall health of the tradition. And that's where we're at today.
And that it shines through us. I'm thinking especially of the episode with your son last year when you had him catching his first raccoon. Your dad was there. You see that tradition coming through. And let's face it, today trapping isn't like, I didn't trap when I was younger. All my friends did. My brothers did. That was a way to that was your part-time job back in the 70s and the early 80s. It's not that way now. Now it's about managing a resource, which takes that passion of being an outdoors person to be able to want to do that, to get up in the morning and check traps and things like that. And those, I think the things that shine through with your program are that. The other thing, I think, it helps transcend the importance of trapping to what we do here, which is deer hunting. And I know you've had many segments on this, but how do you approach, just let's say canines, mostly coyotes? I mean, I know in some areas people can trap wolves, but it's very limited.
Yep.
What would be the educational points that you're going to make to somebody who's wanting to get into trapping, maybe an adult onset trapper, with that intention of, hey, I want to try to help manage my land for other game animals?
Just get started. You get some traps in the ground. You're going to learn. There's very few basics And there's going to be a lot of people that are going to tell you need to do this, you need to do that. More often than not, they're trying to sell you something. They're trying to sell you pan covers. They're trying to sell you whatever. I don't use pan covers. I don't think they're needed. I don't wax my traps. I try and keep everything as basic as it can be so anybody can do it. And that's one of the things that we do try and show in our TV shows, our videos and everything is yes, it's hard work. It takes a lot to pound sets in. If you want to go out and pound 25, 30 sets in, at the end of the day, you're going to be a little tired. But if you bed your trap properly, that's first and foremost the number one key to being a successful predator trapper. Bedding the trap properly where there's no wiggle and no wobble in the trap. That way, if an animal does come in and starts to work your set, when they put their foot down, if they miss the pan, the trap doesn't move up. So that's number one. You have to have the trap bedded absolutely as tight as you can get it. Number two, it doesn't matter if you're buying our bait, North American Trapper, or Mark June, or Dale Billingsley, or it does not matter. Most all baits on the market are going to work for you. Yes, each guy has their own little formulas and things, but in essence, they're all good attractors and they're all good baits. And if you have something in the hole that piques the interest of the animal and you have your trap bedded and covered properly, that's it. And then all you have to do at that point is be on location. And then there's one more key to being a successful predator trapper: patience. If you can show patience to where if you put a trap in and you come up and you see a coyote track on the bed, but he didn't work the set, don't feel you did anything wrong. Don't rebait it. Don't relure it. Don't touch it. Stay away from it. Leave that track there. And I guarantee you within 2 days, that particular coyote or any other coyote coming through is going to come back and work that set. So patience is a key. It's no different than there's a couple analogies. Let's say, I remember going in and my grandmother was making a homemade apple pie. You walk in one day, you're like, oh, I got to have a piece of pie. And you got to have one right then. When you walk in the next day, you might be like, oh, it smells the same. And you're like, nah, I don't really want it right now, but I'll have one later. Well, animals are like that too. I'm going to stay away. If you continue to relure and add more to that, when they come back, now it's different. If they come back 2 days later and some of that smell is dissipated, they're more apt to work it because what they were apprehensive about is now diminished. So bedding the trap properly, having something down in the hole that piques their interest, and patience. And anybody, nothing makes me happier than somebody sending me an email and it's a kid 8 years old or 9 years old and their parents are there saying, hey, I caught my first coyote after watching you. That's the coolest thing to me. And anybody can do it if they just do those 3 things, really only 2 things, and only one thing that's actually mechanical, bedding the trap properly. The other things are just throw some bait in the hole and have patience. And everybody can be successful. And that's anywhere across the board. Hunters, ranchers, farmers, homeowners. If they use those simple techniques, they're going to be successful and catch some of those predators.
Have you guys picked up on that advice there? Because he's talking about trapping, but this is the same advice that I would give somebody who's deer hunting. You're hunting a food plot. You have a stand. I see this all the time. You have a stand. You worked all summer to get. Let's just say we're talking about a food plot. It doesn't even have to be a food plot. It could be some oak mast in the woods, and you hung that stand, and that buck comes through, but he's 50 yards out, and you get impatient and you go move that stand. It's the exact same concept right there. I mean, and I'm sure, because I know Steve Bartella was a big trapper growing up. Brad Rux was a big trapper growing up. Those things that you learn on a trap line sure make you a much better deer hunter and everything else. Man. Okay, guys, let's take a break and thank one of today's sponsors. That is Apex Competitions and Apex Outdoor Rewards. Hit record and win rewards. Enter the Apex Whitetail Challenge in your state for your opportunity to win big cash. If you enter today, you're going to get a 4K camera absolutely free. These things are super nice. This is a 10-time optical zoom, 24 megapixel camera that you can film your hunts this fall. Super handy, super nice. That's a $300 value, absolutely free. Reserve one for you today by going to apexoutdoorrewards.com. So tell us about your deer hunting background. Pennsylvania's undergone a lot of changes since you were young. How did it start, and where is it now?
Oh, how it started? Well, I got my license in 1982, I believe. Yeah, 82. There were a lot of deer, and it was statewide. The big woods, Potter County, Tioga County, Clinton County, Lycoming County, that north central region. I mean, we used to go up there, and back then you had camps, 20, 25 guys in a camp. A lot of you drive a lot because driving's legal, and there was a lot of deer. They started to add more tags in the 90s. Then everybody started, yipping that there wasn't enough deer. Then that guy, Gary Alder, did a wonderful job with our bear stuff here as the biologist, took over the deer stuff and implemented the antler restrictions. And people were losing their minds. This is crazy because they weren't allowed to shoot the little spikes anymore. Where we're at in Pennsylvania now, that program has really done a nice job for us. There is consistently dozens and dozens and hundreds and thousands of deer shot every year now in Pennsylvania, and every one of them's bigger than anything I saw shot back in the 80s. They've created a healthier herd. Now, we still have those areas in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh where they're not hunted, and there'll be 50 deer in a subdivision, but they're at that 1.5 to 1, 2 to 1 ratio in a lot of parts of the state, where guys are seeing big bucks. So people are happy with it, more so now than they were from probably early 2000s to even into the 2010s. That program has taken a hold, but where we hunt a lot of state ground. I still hunt a lot of state ground. I don't see the number of deer that I did back in that day, but it goes to patience again. If you're patient, you're going to see one that you really want to take. So
the overall,
I would say overall, it's health. The overall health of the herd is pretty good.
And the overall satisfaction among hunters is probably pretty good then as well?
I think in Pennsylvania, you're always going to have people griping. That's just part of the
human nature
here in Pennsylvania. But I think overall, people are very happy with the quality of deer that they're actually able to get an opportunity at versus what it was in the past.
What about like here we have a great divide between private land and public land. Our public land, which I hunted for over 20 years growing up, it's hard. It's tough. It's very difficult. If you have private land, you're pretty blessed because you can control things. Is that kind of how it is in Pennsylvania, or?
It is to a certain extent in some areas, but Pennsylvania's got a lot of state game lands. I mean, Pennsylvania, even the Game Commission is always buying up land for state game lands. And if you look at a state game land map in Pennsylvania, north of Route 80, it's pretty much, there's pockets of private ground, but your big tracts of land is state forest land. So we don't have obviously you're going to have some issues, but we don't have a lot of the issues that a lot of other states have because of the state game lands being afforded the hunters. Now they talk about, Pennsylvania had 1 million hunters. Our numbers obviously are not that high now. I don't know exactly, but I think it's around 600,000. So there's still a lot of room out there. First day it looks like a pumpkin patch because you got to wear all orange. Basically, it's the woods. If you're on state ground, it used to sound like a war. Just from daylight till dark. Count shots. You count 200 shots in a day Now you'll hear 15, 20, but the opportunity for that bigger deer is something that I think more people are okay with versus having, I'm going out and get a deer today.
Right.
I think the opportunity at a bigger deer is something that has carried a lot of weight as time gone on. But as far as the public and private issues, yeah, there's people that have private ground and it's posted, and that's fine. That's their ground. But the state game lands affords a lot of opportunity for hunters here in Pennsylvania.
Some of the craziest videos I've seen are on YouTube of guys from Pennsylvania filming themselves hunting and just showing the confrontations. Because I mean, Pennsylvania used to be number one as far as hunter numbers. I mean, it was Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin were the three big ones.
Yep.
And so talk about that for a second, Alan, as far as maybe not so much the crowds, but okay, you just mentioned you have some big cities in Pennsylvania. You have some big urban areas. How, and I know you do this with your TV show, how do you educate non-hunters to the importance or maybe just the acceptance of hunting and trapping?
I try, me personally, if you've seen the showcase that we have on Pursuit, we try and get clips and stories and things that resonate with people who are not in the community. We started off the one showcase with 5 or 6 different clips of coyotes grabbing dogs, pets, coming in the backyard and grabbing dogs. And we've shown the destruction that raccoons can do to cornfields, and we've shown destruction that raccoons can do to property, and we've shown pet animal conflicts. Anytime that we can take something that is an issue that maybe doesn't get the press from anybody, we try and put that and correlate it to the person who doesn't know about the outdoors. Why is this necessary for you? And if you look at hunting, trapping's even worse, but if you look at hunting, you got 10% against it, 10% for it, you got 80% in the middle. Trapping's probably 20% against it, 69% in the middle, and 1% for it, in the whole grand scheme of things. So, you're in the low fruit, but I'm in the real hanging low fruit. They're coming after us all the time because they don't understand that we're not using archaic devices. And anytime that I can show that we are using humane equipment, that we are doing a service for you, it's going to help the population of not only animals that we're taking, but it's going to help your pets because there's going to be less animals, which means there's going to be less rabies, which means there's going to be less distemper. I try and take those situations that are everyday situations for the normal homeowner, farmer, things of that nature, and do our education through those processes.
Yeah. And like for coyotes, I did notice another thing that you had was so let's say I'm a non-hunter and I ask you this question. What is the purpose? Like, why should we trap coyotes? Or while trapping is archaic, I know it's not, but I'm just playing devil's advocate. Trapping coyotes is, why don't you just hunt them instead?
My philosophy with them is, there's a lot of studies on this, and I try and look at both sides before I make up my mind how I want to show how this works. There are studies out there that show that if you take a coyote out of the equation, out of a parcel of land, 25, 50 acres, that in 3 weeks, a new coyote comes in and takes over residence. Because what that coyote found inviting for that area, that transitioning or transient coyote, when he comes in, is going to find it interesting as well, and no other coyote is there. That's true. But when you're looking at the fawn dropping season, the turkey hatching season, things like that, if you're taking coyotes out of the equation, I can guarantee you that coyote is not causing you any issues. That coyote is now out of the equation, and you're helping your own little area. Can you decimate them? Absolutely not. There's a bunch of people that say this. If there was ever a Holocaust or an apocalypse or whatever, there'd be two things left: coyotes and cockroaches. That's probably true to an extent. They are survivors, but I can guarantee you the ones you're taking out of the equation are not doing anything against you on your management because you're getting them out of the equation. Now, there may be other ones come in, and that's one of the points we try and make. We never go and say that, you got to use these dog proofs to take the raccoons out, the nest raiders, or you got to use these 550s to take the coyotes out. And once you get them out, your land is good to go. It's an ever going process. It's no different than, habitat management, burning, food plots, all the things that go into managing your property and becoming the steward of your own land. Trapping is just one more thing in that process that you can use as a tool that goes well with all of them. If you think you're going to solve all your problems with trapping, it's not going to happen. If you think you're going to solve all your problems with habitat management, and that's not going to solve all your problems. It's got to be a combined effort, and you as a landowner, or you as a lease owner, or whatever, you have to make those commitments. It's a commitment. You got to do it year in, year out, and you got to stay focused. No different than what you would do when you're putting up game cameras to see where the trails are, where I want to hang my stand. Well, that's part of your deer hunting process. You just throw in trapping as part of that deer hunting process now. So I don't know if that answered your question in the way you were looking, but it's not an end-all, solve-all game. Trapping is a part of the process that does have to be continually done. You can't get, like I said, half a dozen dog proofs, go in and take 15, 20 coons off your land and think that your turkeys are going to be booming next spring. You got to do it year in, year out to alleviate that pressure over time, so they do have that, along with habitat management, burns, food plots, and everything that goes into it.
The analogies you put there are excellent, and I was kind of hoping you would. I didn't know you were going to go to that level, and that's awesome, because that's one thing that I always say is that it has to be a continual effort. Now, what I would add in here, I'm certain that Alan would add this in there too. If you don't know your state's regulations, you need to check that out. If you've never taken a trapper class, you really should, even if you're not going to do it much. But it's a sustain. Thankfully, here in Wisconsin, where I live, if you're a property owner, you can pretty much trap coyotes and coons year round, which is nice. And I do that especially. I haven't honed my skills on coyotes yet, but I have honed them on coons. And one thing I do know is, like what you said, this is going back 25 years. The first year I went in there, I had box traps, and I took out, I think, 17 raccoons, and I thought, man, that's awesome. I'm done. I saved a bunch of turkeys. Well, guess what? Next year there was twice that many, you know. And that's so what I always say is that coons, coyotes, they're opportunists just like anything else. If that land is good enough, you're going to have them, and it's got to be a sustained effort. Now, if you can get your neighbors to do it, even better, right?
Yeah. You can have concerted effort with your neighbors, then you're getting all of that done to where you're not going to have that transient effect as much.
The other thing too, what about one thing I've noticed is I have some friends who are trappers who utilize the fur. Finding somebody who will utilize that fur if you're not going to.
That's one of the questions I get, and one of the things that really bothers me when I hear it, and it comes from a lot of trappers, is that, well, I'm not trapping this year. It ain't worth anything. That's like nails on a chalkboard to me, because I'm so passionate about trapping. I don't trap for the money. I've never been. Now, there are guys out, west that, when the coyotes are selling for $100, they can make a pretty fair living in that time. But when you have a down fur market, nobody wants trap. Well, then you have exploding predator and animal populations. But that bothers me for the sense that I don't do it for that. I do it because of the tradition and the viability of the outdoor sport or tradition in general. I used it as gifts. I get them tanned, and when you take the time and skin a raccoon or a fox or a coyote or whatever, flesh it, put it on a board, dry it, send it away, spend 15, 18, 20 bucks to get that tan, and you give that to somebody, it's perfect for when I ask for permission to people's places. That's what they're getting. Hey, I want to thank you for letting me trap here. Whether I caught anything or not, I'll take another animal from another place. Just, I wanted to give this to you for thanks. It's a great piece of decor for their home, their camp, their lodge. They make a great gift. There's a value to them. You can sell tan furs for way more than you can a raw fur. So there is value to it, and there are markets out there. It's a supply demand issue. It really hurt us last year or a year and a half ago, losing NAFA, North American Fur Auctions, the old Hudson Bay Company. It's been in business over 300 years, and they're gone.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, Canada Goose, who used a lot of the coyote fur for the ruffles and things on the parkas that they were using, they're not buying and using and utilizing the renewable resource that is wild fur. So when you take that Canada Goose who's buying a mass amount of the coyote, that market's going to go down. And when you have NAFA, who's pretty much the biggest promoter of wild fur and wild fur use, out of the equation, you're looking at losing some value. But the value to me, as I said, has always been the actual process of trapping and the actual act of getting out in nature. I don't look at it from a monetary standpoint. And even when I was 16, got my driver's license for the first time, rep muskrats were 14, 15 bucks. It was my goal to go out and catch 100. I went out and caught 100 that year. First year I had a driver's license. That was pretty good money.
Oh, heck yeah.
Kid back in the mid 80s.
You paid for a car back then with that.
You could still buy a candy bar for a quarter, So it was really, gas was what, 75 cents a gallon or something. But there is value. You have to kind of make your own value with it.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Well, let me close this out, Alan, with one last question, because this one is probably another one that's sensitive for you. Social media, okay, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Yep. You see all this stuff today being posted, and we sit there and I struggle with it with deer hunting. Trapping has got to be ultra sensitive. When what do you see that you like and you don't like, and what would be the message that you would have to people who are posting their trapping content on social media?
Well, that's actually probably the best question you asked today, because that's what truly can make a difference. There are a lot of things I see on social media. It goes back to what I said earlier. When I put a show on TV, I watch it, rewatch it, and try and just look at it from an anti perspective. Somebody that's against trapping because of whether it's ignorance or just misguided information or whatever. I want to stay away from anything that can take away from the value of what we do and put it in a bad light. And it's a high percentage. I've never sat here and looked at everybody's posts and put bad, good, but I'm going to say 50% of them, it's high. 50% of them should not be posted. There's just ways to post a picture and do it in a way that is well received. I think, and don't get me wrong, what we do is a service for the animals, and we know that because we have the data, we have the facts, we have all of that on our side. We are on the correct side of science. But when you're dealing with emotional levels, and I try and tell people, you watch TV, you're going to see Sarah McLachlan singing a sad song in the background with all these poor cats and dogs that probably were, they were probably rescued, quite honestly, from somebody who is an animal use person. They think having 500 dogs they're giving them a good life, but in all actuality, they're not. But what do? They touch on people's heartstrings, and they touch them emotionally, and then they get value and they get money. And PETA, Humane Society, if you looked at their financials, they spend an inordinate amount of the money that they take in, putting it out there in those type of commercials and that type of, I call it propaganda, to actually get more donations the following year to continue that process. But all the while, they're providing misinformation and things like that. And they're using the things that we put on. And if we're putting something on social media and it looks barbaric, or it looks archaic, or it looks anything of that fact or that nature, they're going to use it against us. And they're going to be like, see, these guys don't care. And it's just something that I would recommend everybody. And it doesn't, like you said, hunting. It doesn't matter if it's hunting, fishing, trapping. Do things right and do things how you would think somebody against it would perceive it, and just kind of use that process before you post things. You can crop pictures. It's very easy to take a picture into a phone now and crop it. So if you have an animal there and it's in a precarious position, with its trap, cut the trap out. Just show the animal. It's one of those things you just have to use common sense. And if you use common sense, you won't do anything that hurts the tradition or hurts the value of trapping as a whole. And that's actually a really good question. And I'm sure you see it, and you probably cringe every time you see some of the things.
Yeah, I do. I do. And we try to, of course, we're on a little bit older scale for social media, but try to help. I don't want to be the conscience police, but at the same time, like you said, further that message for being responsible steward to the land and to the animals. His name is Alan Probst. His show is North American Trapper on Sportsman's Channel. Alan, what is your website, and when can people watch your show?
I just got my time slots. Our prime time slot starting this fall to be the fourth quarter. We'll run fourth and first, which we always do. That's going to be 10 p.m. Thursday nights Eastern.
Okay.
So 10 p.m. and then it re-airs at 1 a.m. So you're going to get it twice everywhere across the country. 10 East, 7 out on the West Coast, the first slot, and then it'll be 1 a.m. and 10 p.m. on the West Coast. The second time it runs Thursday night into early Friday morning. It'll run a couple times after that. Website, social media, YouTube. We have a YouTube channel for any beginners that are looking to get into trapping. Everything is North American Trapper. If you just NorthAmericanTrapper.com, North American Trapper on YouTube, all of that. If you go there, we got 24, 25, 26 different clips from beginning to getting you out and being successful in the field, whether it's trap prep, baits and lures, equipment. We've kind of tried to put that beginner series out there for, a lot of people that probably listening to this are farmers and ranchers and hunters and guys that need, or women that need this type of a process on their land. And we try and educate through that process. And if they have any questions, get on the website, shoot us an email, and we'll be more than happy to get you started in the right direction.
Awesome. Perfect. Let's all check that out. Thank you, Alan, for joining us. It was really a pleasure to catch up with you again.
I appreciate the opportunity. It's really good to see you, buddy.
Thanks, man. For Alan Probst, I am Dan Schmidt. Again, please check us out, Deer Talk Now, wherever you can find us, deeranddeerhunting.com, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You know where we're at. We will catch you next time here on Deer Talk Now. The Deer Talk Now podcast is brought to you by CuddyLink cell cameras. Up to 24 cameras, one cell plan, and as low as $10 per month. 10-point crossbows, the fastest crossbows in the world. Wildlife Research Center's Scent Killer Gold. Apply it, dry it, and go hunt. Full range hanging systems, the best way to display your shoulder mount trophies. Hunt Stand, the #1 hunting and land management app. The $1 Million Buck Bash by Apex Competitions. And Traditions Firearms, feel the difference.